Do you take enough exercise, or are you among the estimated 1.4 billion people globally who don't exercise enough? A study by the World Health Organization says very little progress has been made in the past 15 years due to increased levels of exercise that people do. Now, this poses a greater risk of a number of diseases, including diabetes, heart attack, dementia, and some cancers because of inactivity. Now, more than 1.9 million people were interviewed for the study in 168 countries around the world. The study showed that women in general were less active than men in all regions. But African nations were among the most active in the world, with Uganda and Mozambique topping the list at 6%. Now, the least active nation in Africa is said to be Mauritania at 43.1% in action. Now, generally, it's a pretty good news for Africa. This is Dr. Fiona Bull from the WHO and the co-author of that study.
The sub-Saharan African region has an average of 21% compared to the global of 28%. And we consider that the explanations for this are largely due to the different lifestyles that we're seeing. And in the sub-Saharan African area, we're seeing countries where the mode of transport is still dominated by walking and cycling. And there's been a slower and yet to be the transition to motorbikes, mopeds and the cars as dominant travel. Secondly, at work and at home, large amounts of activity are taking place still there. It's demanding, at least moderate, if not vigorous activity. So Africa gives us a window on the early stages before the globalization, urbanization transitions that we've seen happen and have consequences on physical activity in other regions.
Now, one of the ways that people stay active is through their work. Ishaq Khalid, our reporter in Abuja, has more.
Can you tell me more about this work you are doing?
This work that I'm doing, it helped me a lot because I use money to feed my family and everybody, and I'm trying to save money so that I can go back to school.
What would you say about this job when we are talking about physical exercise?
No,
because I can see you're sweating.
Yes, I'm physical. The work, I love this work. That's why I'm doing it. And I'm happy to do the work.
Does it help you in terms of physical exercise? What can you tell me about that?
No, I don't do exercise, but this work only. I always see myself fit and strong. And I thank God for that.
So this is like another advantage. You're getting money and at the same time doing a physical exercise.
Yes.
The World Health Organization is saying that people around the world, many people are inactive, and it is suggesting that people need to exercise more. Not necessarily going to the gym, not necessarily going to the stadium or jogging in the morning or riding bike. Daily activities too help in keeping us fit. Ishaq Khalid, BBC News, Abuja.
Well, joining me now from Accra is Dr. Justice Yankson, the Secretary General of Ghana's Medical Association. Thank you for taking time to talk to us. Now, that report by the World Health Organization seems to say that Africa is doing pretty well when it comes to not being inactive, so to speak. But does that really mean the continent is at lesser risk of contracting the diseases I mentioned earlier?
Thank you and welcome to Accra as well. The statistics as indicated is actually what is actually happening on the continent. But per your question, we need to segregate it into two parts. As we speak, the urbanization hasn't really caught up with us like it's done in the West and other parts of the world. But gradually, most African countries or urban cities within Africa are showing a very rapid rate of growth. Now, what is happening is that there is a lot of movement from or migration from the rural areas where traditionally they walk long distances and do a lot of hard work, which is all based on physical activities, into the urban areas. And once they get into the urban areas, it is very difficult for them to have the opportunities to live just like they used to live in their rural areas. In the urban areas, there's less physical activity. People get, in quote, white-collar jobs, which are more sedentary in nature. People don't get the opportunity to walk long distances. They join buses and other forms of vehicle to move around.
So they don't. They're not.
In a nutshell.
So they're not
Yes.
as active as they should be. So
Yes.
this target, the 2025 target of reducing the global inactivity by 10%, given what you're saying, is it really achievable?
Well, it is achievable if we all put our hands on deck and decide that, look, we are going to have a very positive commitment to promoting regular exercises throughout the world. But for Africa in particular, we need to note this caution that because of the rate at which we are urbanizing our societies, if we don't take care sooner than later, our statistics may even be worse than we are seeing in the West. It is very important that we look at that angle as we urbanize.
Yes, but do countries or even companies really have what we call policies towards activity, towards making people healthier and active?
Well, some countries are making efforts. Ghana, for instance, had a policy of preventive health, which included exercises and what have you. Some companies are beginning to understand the need for their workforce to stay active and healthy. So some actually even will go ahead and pay for them to go to gyms. Some have created some recreational facilities within the workplace. Some also encourage weekend activity by their staff. If we are able to spread that to virtually all the regular companies around, then we'll have a lot more of these white-collar jobs being moved in the direction where at least once or twice a week, the staff in there will be able to do some physical activity in the form of exercises to promote good health. And this is something we should add to our occupational health and safety policies throughout Africa and the world at large.
So a lot of milestones to go on. Dr. Justice Youngson, thank you for taking time to talk to us and focus on Africa. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Well, let's now take a look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. 3 firefighters have died in a fire in the southern African city of Johannesburg. One firefighter fell to his death while battling the blaze, while the other 2 were found inside the building. Officials say 13 people who worked in the building have been admitted to hospital. Early reports suggest it was caused by an electrical fault. Now, the Eritrean port of Massawa has welcomed an Ethiopian cargo ship for the first time in about 2 decades. The vessel transported 11,000 tons of Eritrean zinc from the Red Sea port of Massawa to China. Ethiopia and Eritrea signed a peace agreement in July, ending 2 decades of hostilities. Now, Australian researchers are using drones equipped with artificial intelligence to try and protect swimmers and surfers from sharks. Using a special Shark Spotter algorithm to scan live video feeds, they will be able to tell the difference between sharks, dolphins, and 16 other types of marine life. Now, the South African economy is in recession for the first time since 2009, following 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Ramaphoria, the positive wave brought by President Cyril Ramaphosa when he came to power, appears to be officially over. But the government is urging South Africans not to panic. The BBC's Vumani Mkhize has more.
South Africa's plunge into recession surprised many analysts who were expecting the second largest economy in Africa to narrowly avoid a consecutive quarter of negative growth. Statistics South Africa's announcement that the economy contracted by 0.7% follows a 2.6% negative growth in the previous 3 months. A massive 29% decline in agricultural output has been the biggest contributor to South Africa's recession.
Unfortunately, this is not good news for the South African economy and South Africans in general. Our economy has been weak for quite some time. According to the South African Reserve Bank, we've been in a downward phase since the end of 2013. And that is actually not good news, because since then we've seen the unemployment rate increasing, incomes are under a lot of pressure, and as a result, demand is just weak in the economy. Hence, we are seeing this, weak growth trajectory.
South Africa's economy is reeling. A value-added tax increase, rising fuel prices, and an unemployment rate close to 30% is a stark indicator of how much work President Ramaphosa will have to do to rescue the country from a cliff edge. And while the land reform debate did not play a role in the contraction, international investors will be watching it keenly. President Ramaphosa has supported expropriation of land without compensation and has said it will not harm the economy or food production. The negative GDP data also shows that ordinary South Africans are under a significant amount of strain, as decreases in household spending, food and recreation pointed to a reduced disposable incomes for many South Africans. President Ramaphosa told Parliament last month that Cabinet was working on a stimulus package for the economy, and South Africa is seeking $100 billion investments from international investors. Vumani Mkhize, BBC News.
Well, let's go to Sierra Leone now, where one of the biggest ever uncut diamonds was found in March last year. The 709-carat gem, dubbed the Peace Diamond, was found by a Christian pastor who surrendered it to the government. It was later put on auction and sold for a cool $6.5 million, with a promise that a chunk of the money would go towards developing the area of the find. Umaru Fofana reports.
Koyadu village, a sleepy place in eastern Sierra Leone. Sitting in the middle of the forest, it lacks some of the most basic things in life. The community was brought to world attention last year after the discovery of one of the largest ever diamonds in the world. It is beautiful, but like all artisanal mining here, it took back-breaking efforts to find. Even to make it to the mine is daunting. It's a very hard job, and I know this because I did this myself when I was growing up in this district. I was not as fortunate though as a pastor, whose diggers found the massive gemstone right inside this pit. This Christian pastor and his group of diggers found it. They took it to the country's then president to achieve the best dividends possible. After a local auction had failed to impress, the state decided to take the diamond to New York, where it was sold for $6.5 million. Somewhat controversially, $500,000 less than what had been offered during a local auction. The pastor pocketed a cool $2 million for his efforts, and part of the state's share was meant to fund the development of the local community.
Since the government took the lion's share of the sales, they assured us that they will make sure that $1 million is going to return back to the community where the Peace Diamond was found. And they will see that the money will develop the community where it's found.
The problem is that there is very little evidence on the ground of that development.
Well, the benefits will not get it.
As a village, we are yet to derive any direct benefit from the state. We understand the government has promised to do something for us, but that has not yet materialized. They promised to build us a school, a hospital, as well as provide us with water, electricity. We thought we would get a direct share from the sale of the diamond, but the authorities said the diamond was a found property.
The only school in the village is anything but. There are no trained or qualified teachers, and food for most of the villagers is a luxury. In response, the government has told the BBC that contracts has already been awarded for work to start on the road and the school. More than a year on from its discovery, the hope is that the Peace Diamond will still be able to change all of this. Umaru Fofana, BBC News, Kono, Eastern Sierra Leone.